Oh, banger.
And welcome back with Fight Night Picks question mark kicks in 2022. Can't wait for this weekend's card. And if you haven't checked it out already, have a look at our own Joshua Hart's full card betting guide on the site. He's offering up a bit of a different look this week because he's added in the fight previews. He's added in his best values. And at the end, he's got his own card and all sorts of great stuff over there. So a new look from our own Joshua Hart, just doing the damn thing over on the site. And if you are so inclined, you can also check out the store and pick up some of the swag that the boys wear on the shows, including the Fight Night Picks Under Armour adjustable cap. Did I take that picture myself and crop out the rest? Yes, I did. And how about the Under Armour t-shirt? All sorts of great stuff that you can pick up there over on the site, fightnightpicks.com. As we always say, let's get into it. Cheers to 2022 and resolutions you can actually keep. How about upgrading your grooming routine for the new year? Listen, our sponsors at Manscaped are here to make the ball drop into 2022 the cleanest ever. Set your first New Year's resolution with good intentions and join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer. Go to manscaped.com, use the code FNP for 20% off and free shipping. Let's go over to the website. Come on. I mean, look at that. We're over there on the site. All sorts of great stuff. I mean, they've got that limited time only performance package 4.0 with free shipping and 2 free gifts. But again, if you use the promo code FNP, you're going to get 20% off your order. Skin safe technology on the Lawnmower 4.0. You see us using it in studio. Kind of, but we show it off. And the great thing about 2022 and setting new resolutions and trying to get into some new routines for this year, I can tell you one thing. As Craig Allen with Fight Night Picks, the Weed Whacker, it's my favorite product that Manscaped has. And it's one of those things where I have to get ahead of trimming my nose hair, or it gets out of control, it tickles the inside of my nose, and it just gets annoying. So it's one of those things over there on the site, especially if you pick up the Performance Package 4.0, it's going to come with it. Long battery life. I mean, my goodness, very rarely do I ever have to actually plug that sucker in. I mean, it's waterproof, as you can see. All sorts of great stuff over on the site. You know, if you've been over to their site and you want to pick up that Performance Package 4.0, you pick it up. I mean, I'm going to go with a boxer size. Let's go medium. Let's have a little bit of fun with it. We're going to go into our cart. All sorts of great stuff over there as well. Let me tell you about one add-on that I would go with. The 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner. Throw it up there on the screen. Get a good look at me pre-shower. And then the glow up. Look at me now. I'm having a lot of fun. So, I mean, I'm going to add that one to the cart. Now I've got that. I've got the Performance Package 4.0. I go to checkout. I hit checkout. And then over there, boom, I already had my promo code. But I mean, let's add that promo code, FNP. We're going to hit OK. And look at that. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code FNP at manscaped.com. It's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use the code FNP. It's new year, new me in 2022 with Manscaped. We have a heck of a show in the return for 2022 that you're not going to want to miss. So as we always say, let's get into it.
Last look at the big card. Be sure to head into the chat and have your say. Let's get into it and join in Fight Night Picks question mark kicks.
And just like that, we are back and set for 2022. And I want to thank everybody so far that's filled up that chat over there. Let us know what you're feeling for this card. And listen, 2021 was so much fun. 2022 off with a lot of hitches. This card has taken a ton of hits, but some of those fights have been moved over to next week. So UFC 270, it's going to be a great time, and I can't wait for the fights to get going, Matt. I know, we've been kind of chomping at the bit. We've thrown out some different content out there on the channel, but I know we're both really looking forward to this card, especially the main event with Kattar and Chikadze.
It's a phenomenal main event. It really is. I know a lot of the time, okay, here's a good example. The last main event of last year, Chris Dawkins, Derek Lewis. It turned out to be a very fun fight for as long as it lasted, but that's one of those main events where you kind of hope it's either done really quick, because you know what you're going to get for the rest of it. I think we know that's not the case for today's main event. It's going to be a phenomenal fight from the first bell until the last bell of the last round, if it does make it all 5 rounds, because Calvin Kattar and Giga Chikadze are just so good at everything. They're so well-rounded. They're such clean strikers, and they have great cardio too. I could not be more excited for this main event, and it will be interesting to see how does the winner get matched up with going forward? Because the featherweight division's in kind of a weird position right now. You've got Max Holloway, who's the #1 contender, but he's hurt right now. The Korean Zombie's getting the title shot, but let's be honest, a lot of people feel like he's one of the more beatable top guys in the division, so it'll be really interesting to see how the featherweight division settles moving forward.
It really will be interesting with the Korean Zombie getting that shot with the rest of the guys and the way that it's sitting right now. But listen, I think it's going to be a great one. MPTV saying this card's a banger. I'd say Sherman Collier will be the slow one of the night. Unranked heavyweights in your co-main event. It seems like every single Fight Night card I get to say that. Now, heading into this week, that wasn't the plan, but that's what they went with. I think it's a bad one. I mean, Bontorin, Royval, that would be a great fight. Sort on over to our Fight of the Night screen, brought to you by Manscaped. Now, I talked about Manscaped at length, and you should check them out, but on this one, Bill Algeo, Joanderson, Brito, this was one that I was really excited for. Brito didn't make it to media day because of COVID protocols, but he made it to the scale and he looked really good. So when I look at this one, Matt, Brito, this guy's a wild man, and Bill Algeo is a guy that can sometimes wait too long, but when he's drug into a fight, he has a good time too.
He does. Joanderson Brito is kind of like that John Lineker fighter, where it's, I throw big power, if you try to take me down, I try to pop your head off with a guillotine, and it's rinse and repeat. It's a very, very fun style to go back and watch. And with Bill Algeo, we've said it before, like the best version of Algeo looks like a potential top fighter, a top 15 ranked fighter, but we never really see him put everything together. It's kind of like Jaren Jackson Jr. in the NBA. Some games he'll look really good defensively, some games he'll shoot like Kevin Durant. He just never is really able to do everything all at the exact same time. I kind of look at Bill Algeo the same way, although Jackson Jr. is much better at basketball than I would say Algeo is at MMA.
There, we got the basketball reference #1 out of the way. Rick the Ruler saying, what's good, FMP chat? We made it, and we definitely did our second pick for Fight of the Night. I mean, is that Royval Bontorin fight? Now, I got to be completely honest. With this fight and the fight that everybody's kind of thrown over there in the chat with Holmes and Pickett, kind of feel like crapshoots because they're so evenly matched, and that's the trouble with this card. The odds are all over the place, and I see some of these fights as a lot closer than those odds might suggest, but when we look at this fight, Brandon Royval was like, he was in a title eliminator at one point, and now he's lost 2 straight, taking on Bontorin, who came in fit and ready, made the weight yesterday, and you love to see it.
Bontorin's just way better than everybody thinks he is, I think. It's just so weird. He's one of these fighters who public perception isn't all that high around him, but you look at what he's been able to do in the division, and you have to look at more than just the wins and the losses with Bontorin, because he's looked really good in some losing performances, and he hasn't looked great in some of the wins, but I really do think he is the total package. He's another one of these guys, so you're just always kind of waiting for him to put everything together, the grappling with the striking, but we have started to see that fighter, especially up at 135 pounds, oddly enough, but this will be a very fun fight, because with Royval, he's almost one of like the top of the good fighters, but sort of the lower end of the greats, and we're going to figure out, okay, who really can be a contender in this division out of these two?
Bub Collins hitting up the super chat. He loves the NBA comparisons. Bub, we love you. So listen, I've got the shirt on for today. We're throwing a clap back to 2013. Don't ask clown questions, bro, the Bryce Harper, but I do think this is going to be a very good fight. If this is the first time that you've tuned into Question Mark Kicks, toss us a like. We'd really appreciate it. If it isn't your first time, toss a like as well. But what we always do, we start at the bottom of the card. Again, there's only 10 fights. Up here in Canada, honest to goodness, I had a hard time trying to find when's the start time because it was pushed up, then it was pushed back. It was all over the place. And then I tried to look for the card on Fight Pass, and it's not there. This one's on TSN 5. So if you're in Canada, it seems like everything's going to be on TSN 5. If somebody can add that into the chat, let us know how it's going down in the States, ESPN Plus, ESPN, so on and so forth. But we always start down at the bottom. So, Rick the Ruler is saying the card looks so different now, and that is the truth. Now, first fight on this one, you have Downtown TJ Brown taking on Charles Rosa. Clash of styles somewhat. I mean, these guys, listen, TJ Brown switching stances all the time, and he throws really fast. The thing is he in or is he out with his striking? That's kind of the thing when I watch a TJ Brown fight that I keep in my head is that okay, are we going to put power into these shots, or are we just going to kind of hang back a little bit, throw a little bit of volume? I do like the volume, and I really like the amount of takedowns that he goes for in his fights. And I think the fact that this fight is at lightweight will help TJ Brown in certain respects. Now, if you look at it for Charles Rosa, gets a 4-fight deal out of the short notice affair, which is good for him. You like to see it. But it really is a tricky one. So I do want to hear from everybody over there in the chat to see what they're thinking as far as, hey, avenues for Rosa to win. And Prince Vegeta's son setting it up well. TJ Brown trains with Bryce Mitchell. He does, but he was originally getting ready for Gabriel Benitez. I don't know what pointers you're going to get from Bryce Mitchell out of a fight that happened a few years ago on such short notice with Rosa. It's got to be, just keep taking him down. Just keep taking him down.
I have a very simple rule here, Fight Night Picks, and it's if you're billed as a grappler, but I see you get out grappled on a consistent basis, I'm going to have a lot of question marks just whenever you really fight in the UFC. And for Charles Rosa, he is such a strange fighter because in glimpses, it's like, wow, he's this really good karate striker. He moves so well on the feet. And then you see him just get controlled for minutes and rounds on the ground. It is concerning because you know how good his submission game can be when he's put into some of those good positions, when he gets top mount, when he gets a guy's back. But my issue with Rosa, and I like what you had said, I do favor Brown a lot up at 155 pounds. I think his wrestling is going to be a very big problem for Rosa. And this is one of those matchups where you might look at Charles Rosa and say he's the better grappler in this matchup, but I do think that his Achilles heel is the wrestling, and with TJ Brown's ability to go out there and not consistently out-grapple Rosa. I don't think he's going to go from full guard to half guard to mount and just beat away on him, but I think he can get him down, hold him down, and just waste time doing that. And like you had said, if he can commit to some of those shots on the feet, I think he will be able to crash the distance on Rosa and get from point A to point B.
And I mean, I see it over there from Vapor Killer saying TJ Brown is a minus 200 is disgusting chalk, because I mean, you look at it in the fight against Benitez, he was the underdog in that one. Now he's a minus 200 favorite on short notice, up a weight class. Both of these guys up from their regular featherweight. If we look at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram, 60% of the fans have TJ Brown to get the win. It's 201 votes to 136. And again, he had mentioned the odds there. I mean, minus 200. Matt the Mix saying Brown wins by boringness. I think TJ Brown wins this one. I don't have much more to add than, I guess, our short notice ad of, you know, the video that came out, 2 days ago? Like, this is on such short notice. I don't think it favors Rosa. I think it's a good opportunity to get another fight. And if you really do like Rosa and you believe in magic, I mean, listen, in 11 fights in the UFC, Brown, Rosa has alternated wins and losses. He lost his last fight. He's going to win this one.
And here's the thing. I don't think TJ Brown's some world beater. Like, even if he beats Charles Rosa, I don't think he's going to go on some run and be a top 15 guy. Like, both these fighters really need the win tonight.
Pulse Reloaded, was the Montreal screw job a work? The best thing that Pulse Reloaded doesn't know is I have a Montreal Screwjob shirt in the other room, and it has a screw right on the front. Yeah, I think it was a work.
They conspired against him.
Brian Kelleher taking on Kevin Croom. This is another one that was added on short notice, and it's an interesting one for Croom because he gets the fight in his natural weight class and made the weight easily. Like, it wasn't even a job. So they didn't move this one up for him, but they did for Brian Kelleher. Originally, he was supposed to take on Said Yakub Kakramanov. He was an underdog in that fight. Now he's the favorite in a fight against Kevin Croom. And Croom is such a long guy. That's the craziest part about this one. I mean, Kevin Croom has a giant height and reach advantage, something that we stressed in the original video. Sean McMinn hitting up the super chat.
Thank you, Sean.
And I appreciate you. So when I look at this one, Matt, it is kind of a tricky one because for Croom, I mean, he throws from his hips, but he throws overhands. He throws some kicks, but none of them all that spectacularly. It's really his jiu-jitsu and his length that he utilizes well, and this is one of those fights that he could do it. I saw a lot of people really pointing out the fact that for Croom, his takedown average is bad, but he's only had 2 UFC fights, and he went 1 of 16 in the last fight, and he just kept wrestling. So I'll let you take over here.
And that really is the key. He went 1 of 16. With wrestling, it's really okay. Can you get the takedown or can you not? The fact that he went for 16, though, shows that it's definitely something in his game plan. And the whole key to this fight for me, and let me know if you disagree, I think Brian Kelleher is the far more skilled fighter. Kevin Croom's quite a bit bigger, though. It really is just skill versus size to me. Now, are there some parallels between what they do? Yes. Like, Kelleher has good defensive grappling if he is able to set up a submission sort of on the way down. Because that's the thing with Kelleher. If you get the takedown and if you can get him flat on his back, he's not the best grappler. Like, we've seen Ricky Simone do it. We've seen other good grapplers in the past sort of at least just control Kelleher on his back. Croom has that option in his game plan, but it's going to be one of these fights where he either goes 11 for 15 on his takedown attempts, or he's going to eat an uppercut on the first one, be very hesitant to try any more takedown attempts, and then just kind of get beat up on the feet. This is a really hard fight to pick, just because it is Kelleher moving up in weight. Any of these short notice fights, I'm always really hesitant to be like, oh wow, I'm really confident picking one side or the other, but I was thinking Croom at the start of the week, but I do think I have to pick the more skilled guy in Brian Kelleher. He was the one getting ready. Though. Oh, well, oh, sorry. For some reason, I thought I picked Croom. I do like Kelleher and just his ability. He was getting ready for a fight. Now, I agree with what you said, and it is something that has to be brought up. Kevin Croom made weight, and he made weight relatively easily, so that suggests that he has been in the gym. He's been getting guys ready. Like, this isn't just somebody off the couch getting brought into the UFC cage, but I do think Kelleher is the more skilled fighter, and that's who I have to pick.
There's a lot of Glory MMA and fitness adjacent fighters on this card, on next week's card, and if you look at it for Croom, exactly that, and I see it over there, Croom isn't bigger. Clay is throwing it out there. Yeah, honest to goodness, I didn't think he looked 5 inches taller than Kelleher when they were standing there at weigh-ins. And obviously, Croom does look like the bigger, fuller guy, I guess, at 145. And he has the reach. Can he use the reach in a fight like this? That will be to be determined. When I look at the odds for this one, that's another one where, yeah, I mean, do you hedge it with Croom to get the win in the first round? Like, Croom open a plus 275, he's a plus 255 now. Kelleher open a minus 325, he's a minus 323. And the fans at Fight Night Picks overwhelmingly have Kelleher to get the win. 85% of the fans have Kelleher. Like, I like Kelleher in this spot, but I don't have enough confidence going out there because I've seen Kelleher take on a taller guy like a Montel Jackson that has some of those strengths. He's Croom turned way off, and if you broke the knob and threw it out the window in your car, but I do like Kelleher in this one.
Montel Jackson just goes from like getting in a rear naked choke to dropping people. It's crazy. Yeah, I think Brian Kelleher should be able to get the win, but let's say the size really is a problem for him, and he is getting controlled up against the cage a lot, especially early on. That might sap some of the submission ability and just overall explosiveness from Brian Kelleher. So maybe Croom could get the opportunity to win late if he is able to tire Kelleher out early, but I agree with you. I like Brian Kelleher.
All right, Matt, we'll move into our next fight. This one was originally scheduled. These guys have been ready for each other for some time. We have season tough winner. And I say seasoned because this guy has been around for some time. Now, he's had 18 fights in the UFC, has Court McGee, 15 of them going to decision. Whether you like it or whether you don't, I mean, that is the way it has gone. And for a guy like Court McGee, kind of shown his age in some of his fights. In his last fight against Claudio Silva, he didn't, but Claudio did. That was kind of the kicker. Taking on Ramiz Brahimaj, a one-hitter quitter of a first-round guy. Does he have the steam in the tank to get it done as the fight goes on? That's really the question.
It's the only question. That is the only question in this fight. If Ramiz can hit Court McGee with a big overhand and get him in a guillotine in the first 30 seconds, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I'd be like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense to me, and that's probably Court McGee's last fight in the UFC. But if Court McGee won out, let's say you had a nap and you woke up and your wife was like, Craig, I don't know if you care, but Court McGee won 30-25. You'd be like, oh, well, that makes quite a bit of sense. Like, he probably controlled him for the first round, and then 2 10-8s because Brahimaj got tired. Here's the thing. I mentioned Wolf tickets when we talked about Vanessa Demopoulos. We've sold some Wolf tickets on Brahimaj, too. Like, he hasn't showed the abilities that he showed outside the UFC in the cage yet.
Did you watch his last fight?
I did, but we've talked about Brahimaj like he could be a top 15 guy. And if he goes out there and beats Court McGee, that's not all of a sudden going to suggest to me that he's ready for that. I would like to see Ramiz Brahimaj go out there and get that one really dominant win like we've sort of been suggesting throughout the whole week. I would like to see him go out there today, get that one drop shot, and then submit Court McGee. Because if he is able to do that and finish someone who is so durable like Court McGee is.
Never been submitted.
And that's the thing. Like, McGee can eat bombs from power punchers. He can grapple his way out of bad positions. Like, if you can finish Court McGee, that can erase a lot of the wrongs that I've seen from your other fights. And I do think that this is going to be Brahimaj's sort of chance to get some of the negatives away from him. Because Court McGee is a stylistic matchup that is quite favorable to Brahimaj. I know we worry about the cardio, but there's nothing that Court McGee does skill-wise that I really worry about if I'm in the camp of Brahimaj.
Court McGee, when he strikes, kind of stiff, throws a lot of volume, but his percentages are bad. Like, his accuracy's quite bad on his volume, and that's just, he backs guys up, he gets into the clinch, he tries to wrestle, unless you're Carlos Condit, and then he abandons that. When we look at the odds for this one, McGee, slight underdog, open to minus 120, he's a plus 103. If you look at it for Brahimaj, open plus 100, he is a minus 124. And Prince Vegeta's son saying McGee diminishing returns. Todd, you've been waiting for this, and there's a lot of talk over there about the playoff games in the NFL. The votes at Fight Night Picks, 69% on Brahimaj. I have Ramiz Brahimaj. I had him when he was an underdog. When the line first dropped, like, I hit it. So that is one of those guys that I have, is Ramiz Brahimaj. But again, it is a tricky fight for him. I don't have a QMK parlay this weekend, so save people from asking for it. Just kicking 2022 off with some wins. That's what I'm looking for. So both of us going with Brahimaj, right?
And we both agree that if Court McGee is going to get the win, it's probably weather a
decision.
big storm in that first round, and then, just try to grind his way to a win.
Unless he Guida Santos him. Now, this is a fight where I really want to hear from everybody over in the comment section. There's a little over 300 of you tuning in right now. Joe saying, I'm back. When we look at this, Jamie Pickett taking on the man himself, Joseph Holmes. Now, I did get the chance to watch looking for a fight. It wasn't looking forward to a fight. It wasn't whatever they were trying to do on the YouTubes. And I sat down with my wife and watched it. And as soon as Dean Thomas started cutting into that bull's testicle, that was it. We were eating supper last night, and that was on. Great stuff, neat stuff. It felt like a throwaway episode. It was kind of weak. Like, it was just a weak episode. I didn't have fun watching it. But they got into the fights. They showed you Joseph Holmes and Jonathan Patti. And Jonathan, if you're out there, again, don't watch this, because he was a stepping stone for both these guys to make it into the UFC. There was a nut shot. They didn't show this part of it in Looking for a Fight, but it was like 2.5, 3 minutes where he was down. It was a bad nut shot. Holmes comes back in. It was a lot of fun. But then when you actually watch the fight, and you go through all of the Joseph Holmes tape, except for the fight that he had with Bellator, this is one pro loss, because he took on a great wrestler. Like one of the best wrestlers in G3, the best wrestler in Newman. So when you look at all of his other fights, low volume, slow takedowns, like nothing that I love to see against not the greatest level of competition. He's got power. He's been working at Glory MMA and Fitness directly with Krause, and Krause is kind of the one that sold Dana White on signing Holmes, so it'll be interesting to see how this one goes. But I set it up in the first video at the start of the week, and you went with the pick on this. Jamie Pickett understands body weight up against the cage. He understands how to get out of bad positions, and when he needs to turn it on, he can. I have Joseph Holmes, but it is the least confident pick on this whole card.
I don't think this is an amazing fight. It isn't. If you're a big MMA fan, you're probably not like crazy excited for this fight, if we're all being honest. This match with Joseph Holmes, and we both were feeling this when we did the original prediction video. When you watch his old fights, did you once feel impressed by most of his opponents? Like the Patti win, that's a good win. But when you look at his fights, he just kind of ends up in good positions in a lot of them. It's never him going out there and taking the position or him doing something that really impresses you. It's his opponent kind of gets tired, he gets into mount, and then he'll either submit them or ground and pound them to a win. Like, it's not that it's super disappointing, but nothing he does is all that impressive. And at least Jamie Pickett is okay in the clinch. Now, again, I'm not here to tell you Jamie Pickett's going to go and win a UFC title tomorrow, but I do think that Pickett at least has a few UFC-level skills that will be shown in this fight. But again, I don't think the winner of this is going to be in the top 15 anytime soon.
No, I mean, Laureano Staropoli just... no. Like, it started out good, and then when he went up to 185, it really didn't. I mean, for Holmes, he's got the length. Both guys are some of the longer, rangier guys you're going to see at middleweight. I like Holmes in this one. Clay saying, Holmes has a higher ceiling, but probably Pickett wins today. So when you look at that and you look at everything, I mean, if Clay's saying it, if we're saying it, maybe just stay away. 60% of the fans at Fight Night Picks have Holmes to get the win. And the line on Joseph Holmes is, he's a favorite. Open minus 175, minus 152 right now for Jamie Pickett. Open plus 150. He's plus 127. So, I mean, you might like Pickett based off his volume. You might like him off his clinch work. Like, I keep talking up Pickett. I like the harder shots out of Holmes, and that's why I have him in this fight. But we'll move on to our next one, because this is one that I can get behind and get excited about. Joanderson Brito is insane. He will run across the cage and take you down. If he hits you in the nuts and the referee goes stop, but doesn't step in, he'll punch you a couple more times and knock you down. Brito is, again, I said this at the start, but I really do believe it. He's going to be your favorite fighter's favorite fighter. He is all action from the word go, and he throws a lot of power, and he tires himself into exhaustion. And Bill Algeo is the opposite. He waits too long, but he still has that staying power and the volume and the lasting abilities in the third round, especially near the end. So when we look at this one, Matt, Algeo, Brito, we're split on the pick at the start of the week too. What are you saying about this fight? Because I think this one's going to be so much fun.
Do you remember the song from SpongeBob, When Worlds Collide? Probably not. Weird call out. That's what this fight is, because you set it up perfectly. Brito is that ultimate fast starter. I'm going to go out there, I'm going to use my athleticism, I'm going to use my strength, and I'm just going to try to get you in my positions. I'm going to try to take you down. I'm going to try to ground and pound you. But like you said, Bill Algeo almost waits way too long to get started. And it's going to be really interesting, because if Brito does start very fast, and if he is letting Algeo sort of get warmed up early on, then Algeo could get his rhythm and could get his pace early on in the first round, and then we could just see him use his movement, try to keep Brito at the outermost edge of his punches, and just try to pick away at him as he moves forward. But if Brito is able to crash that distance and land body shots, I think those are going to be really important in this fight, because if he is able to land to the leg and to the body of Algeo, prevent him from moving left and right, and just make him a more stationary target, then Brito should be able to unload with some big shots. But I do think Algeo's ability to use his range and get in and out of the pocket is just a really hard thing to ask a guy making his UFC debut to solve.
And when I look at this fight, again, for Algeo, the takedown defense isn't there. When you're taking on a primary striker in Ricardo Ramos, who happens to train at Team Alpha Male and has for some time, but you get taken out 8 times by that guy, like, that was bad. And I had Algeo in that fight, and it really did kind of weird me out the way that one played out. Now, when you look at the odds for this one, Brito making his UFC debut, they open at par. He's minus 151 right now. Algeo, again, plus 127 at this point. At Fight Night Picks for the votes on Instagram. And look at that, 64% going with Joanderson Brito to get the win. A fun fighter to watch, but again, if Brito loses this fight, it's going to look really bad. It's going to look so bad. It's going to be Santos Guida bad.
Oh, 100%. But this should be a phenomenal fight, because even if Brito does get tired in the first round, he's going to throw absolutely wild, exhausted bombs for about 10 minutes, and we'll get to see how Bill Algeo tries to solve that problem. So I think this could be a phenomenal fight, even though we are split on the pick.
And the craziest part about it, too, this fight echoes like 7 of the fights next weekend.
Yeah, it does.
Established UFC veteran, newcomer who's got all the hotness. I mean, we just did the graphics and all the notes and everything today, but that card, that's a Fight Night Pick special type of card. And this fight is one of those fights. It's very similar. You have Dakota Bush taking on Slava Borshchev, and listen, so many people like Slava Borshchev. Like, it's insane, the support that we've seen. If you think people like Giga Chikadze on this channel, they like Slava Borshchev, and they don't like Craig Allen going, Dakota Bush is going to win this fight. But I do think he is, and I'm in the smallest of minorities. Now, the odds support my argument, but the fans are all over Borshchev. So when I look at this fight with Dakota Bush, he will engage in the striking too much, and that's the part that you hate. So think of the fight between Melzik Bogdasarian and Colin Anglin. A lot of parallels in this one. Anglin could strike. He could strike against guys that could wrestle, but when he really needed to wrestle, he's a very good wrestler. He goes into the fight against Melzik, he strikes too much, he gets knocked out. Bush could do that in this fight. I think the work with Glory MMA and Fitness, I think the work at home will really pay dividends in a fight like this. You're training with Jake Collier, that's really going to pay out when you're taking on Slava Claus. Now, the Manly channel hitting us up in the super chat.
Thank you very much.
Fights are back, ready for all this year's F&P breakdowns. Thank you for the hard work, guys. Thank you to the Manly channel. Barry's saying Borshchev winning easy, bro. Who else is there? Billy Slap saying Jeff Molina said Bush is coming in the best he ever looked. Now, Billy, we looked at Molina's Twitter, and he also picked all the Glory guys to win, so you have to. But when I look at this one, again, Borshchev, world-class striking, and I can kind of talk you through the notes that I had at the start of the week as to why he is such an accredited striker, but I know you have a lot of good points on him, too.
He's a kickboxer in MMA. That's my big issue with him, but it's a really big positive too, because when you watch him strike, he does have a very effortless way of throwing his strikes. There's no thought behind what he's doing. He can really let his strikes flow, and the thing I really wanted to bring up in our first video was, I like the way that he's able to disrupt his opponent's balance. He really likes kicking out that front leg when his opponent's moving forward, and if he's able to do that against Dakota Bush, keep on disrupting his balance, never really let him get set positionally, so he can shoot in on your hips, then I think Slava Borshchev can have a phenomenal fight. But this is going to be a weird fight, because I think if he does get the win, it's going to be a spectacular win that's going to get people way too excited about him in the future. One of those like Uros Medic Alon Cruz wins where it's like, wow, that was really nice, but let's pump the brakes a little bit, because with Slava Borshchev, his striking is so eye-catching and it is so kind of awe-inducing that it does sort of hide a lot of these drawbacks in his game. He has awful takedown defense, and he's not somebody who works well to get back up to their feet. We see different fighters. Some fighters are very active off their back, where they'll go for submissions. Others, like Tony Ferguson, although he goes for submissions, he'll try to be offensive with strikes. Slava Borshchev will hold a closed guard and not really have good control with his arms and just try to use his hips to keep his opponent away from him because he is quite tall for this division. It's kind of like an Alexander Volkov grappling defense, if you will, because he just tries to rely on his own physical advantages to then be good enough to defend whatever kind of grappling attack you have against him. That doesn't work in the UFC. Yes, when you're a really, really good striker against lower levels of competition, you can get away with just using your strength to get back up to your feet and then outstriking your opponent. This is going to be one of those weird kind of Goldilocks fights where either Slava looks amazing and he just destroys Dakota Bush, or he gets taken down 35 times and he can't get back up to his feet.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, when I look at Dakota Bush's last fight against Austin Hubbard, great first round. Rounds 2 and 3 kind of fell out of favor. And again, it was on incredibly short notice, as was mentioned there by Billy Slaps, which is true. And then when I look at this fight, yeah, I mean, for Slava Borshchev, it was said as well, yeah, he's training with Uriah Faber, he's training Team Alpha Male. He hasn't hit his Ricardo Ramos peak at all. Like, the takedown defense is not good, and he's one of those guys that if Bush was to go in there, pop a couple jabs in there and a low kick, all of a sudden Borshchev brings his guard way up and the double leg is completely there. So for me, that's why I have Dakota Bush. I've seen him in fights against wrestlers lose wrestling. I've seen him in fights against strikers wrestle, and he wins easily. So when I look at this fight, that's why I'm going with Dakota Bush. He is the underdog in this fight to the tune of a plus 159 on best fight odds for Borshchev, minus 191. Again, I see a lot of people going with Borshchev in this fight. At Fight Night Picks, sorry, nope, 79% going with Borshchev.
Last non, I'm sorry, but I have to disagree with you on that. Petr Yan has some of the greatest takedown defense you'll ever see, and he's got really fast hips, so where the second you even think about going for the takedown attempt, he's already reacting to it. With Slava Borshchev, he's almost sort of waiting so long on your takedown attempt that by the time he starts defending it, he's almost too far into it. But his striking is sort of similar to him.
VT, good to see you over there in the chat. For Borshchev, 2-0 boxing career in 2019. He was a K1 world champion in kickboxing 2010, 2011. He had over 200 amateur kickboxing fights. He had 18 pro kickboxing wins after that. So that's why you might like him in this fight. But yeah, for me, I got to disagree. I got to go with the underdog Bush. Now we have the rematch that everybody's been waiting for. Former title challengers Katlyn Chookagian and Jennifer Maia. For Chookagian, she fights Maia at UFC 244, books a title shot against Valentina Shevchenko, loses in impressive fashion. Jennifer Maia takes some time, rebuilds, fights Shevchenko, has the best showing we've seen since Amanda Nunes, but ultimately loses that fight. Now, we come back to this rematch. Chookagian's fought what? 2 times as many times as Maia has since they both fought the first time at 244. So I'd like to see what people are thinking on this one, but to me, I just don't see any big differences between their games from fight 1 to fight 2, and that's why I have to go with Chookagian.
I agree, so I guess I'm just gonna throw this question to you. Is there a world where this is a really fun fight? Like, is there a world where Chookagian might get taken down early, there's some fun scrambles, and then we get a fun striking? Okay, no. Yeah, I think Katlyn Chookagian's going to use her movement really well in this fight. She was able to do it in the first one. And the problem is, if you can take Chookagian down, then you can beat her. Because she's very mobile on her feet, so it just makes her extremely elusive. But if you can at least counter her or get her into a spot where you can inflict damage, then you have great success. The problem is that Maia is just terrible at cutting the cage off. And if you can't cut the cage off, and if you can't take Katlyn Chookagian down, she's just going to keep on backing up, 1-2s, and she'll probably win a lopsided decision.
Derek Jimenez is saying, had to disagree with previous video on Maia Chookagian, and that's fine. I mean, there is a world out there where Maia can get the takedown. Again, she was able to get the stumble or the takedown against Shevchenko in their fight and dominate positionally in that round to get the 10-9 in that one, if you want to call it that way. Christian is saying, listen, going with Maia. So, hey, if you like Jennifer Maia, you let us know down below in the comments section. We'll give you the fan vote on this one. But again, it's one of those ones that kind of irks me. And look at that, the fan vote. Instagram decided to hide it. So we'll move on to the next fight, Matt. Because this is one that everybody can get behind. Brandon Royval taking on Rogerio Bontorin. For Bontorin, makes weight coming into this one. And in the UFC, we've seen some tricky fights. I mean, listen, he was a giant underdog in his UFC debut. He's a plus 255, gets the win by split decision, and he's kind of not really looked back. I mean, yeah, he's got that one loss to the man himself, Kai Kara-France, who will be an eventual title challenger, I would think. Maybe. If he's able to win his next fight, I think he gets the opportunity. But for Bontorin so far in the UFC, he beats Bibulatov, he beats Paiva, loses to Borg, loses to Kara-France, beats Schnell. So now he gets an opportunity to get a win over a guy who was in a title eliminator at one point in time. And for Royval, he's in the same spot that Bontorin was in his last fight. He's on a 2-fight skid. He's kind of lost all of the excitement, I guess, that was around him and the luster. Now he's just that guy from Factory X looking to pick up the pieces, a guy who happens to train with Alexander Hernandez, and so on and so forth. But Matt, when I look at this fight, we were split on the pick at the start of the week, so I do have a tricky time with this one.
Here's the thing. I think Bontorin had a perfect last opponent to get him ready for this fight because Matt Sales, what is he really good at? Matt Schnell, sorry. What is he really good at? Well, he's got a great offensive submission game. He's a really good striker who stands extremely upright. Yes, I would say Pantoja is more durable than Matt Schnell, but when you look at the bare bones of their game, they do very similar things. So for Bontorin, he's basically had 2 training camps getting ready for a very similar opponent. And the thing I like about Bontorin, this is something we don't talk about for MMA fighters, but like Alexander Volkanovski is a good example of it. Being compact is a very good skill to have in MMA because if you're not tall and lanky, you're normally going to be a lot stronger than your opponent because everybody has to make the same weight. So if you're shorter, you normally carry a lot more muscle. And with Bontorin, he is just such an active fighter no matter what weight class he competes at. Now, this is the big thing. If the weight cut did drain him, I do worry about him in this fight against Royval because then he won't be able to keep a great pace. I do worry about him even eating some of the power shots of Royval because the thing that people forget is that, yeah, Royval got beat by Kai Kara France, but he also, he dropped him. He looked good. He hit him with that elbow. There were some good moments in there. So I think for Royval, it's going to be a very fun fight. I just think Bontorin's the more compact guy, and I think he's got the better defense too. If he's the one going for takedowns, I think he might be able to get it on Royval. But on the flip side, I don't know if Royval can just go out there and get clinch control time or just go out there and get a takedown from Bontorin.
Avery's saying I've been 50-50 on this one, giving the slight edge to Bontorin. Wouldn't be surprised if Royval wins. And yeah, I mean, like I said, at the start of the week, I was going with Brandon Royval all day, and I was on the fence. I mean, you look at the odds for this one between these two elite flyweights, I think that's fair to say, as long as Bontorin makes the weight, which he did, and they opened a par. Bontorin now a plus 141. If you look at it for Royval, he's a minus 169. And I mean, listen, you look at the fan vote at Fight Night Picks for this fight. This one actually did show up, so that one's always good. And the fans have it 77% Royval to 23% Bontorin. The shade, Laos Non saying Royval for the sub, Bontorin for the decision. And if you just want to stay away from it, do it. Just do it. Just stay away from this fight because it is really close and now it's lined and it continues to move away.
I just worry about Royval's grappling, especially after what we saw in the Pantoja fight. And I know Pantoja's a great grappler, but we've even seen him get out-grappled. Figueiredo was able to out-grapple Pantoja a little bit in their fight. Pantoja got out-grappled by Askarov, although they had some good exchanges. Just with Royval, his submission game is very, very good, but he gets to them from scrambles. It's very Tony Ferguson-esque with the way he scrambles and with the way he gets submissions, whereas I think Bontorin can just win more minutes throughout this fight. So if there's a finish, it's probably because Royval finished Bontorin, but I do think Bontorin by decision is the same.
I'm going to take Bontorin in this fight as well. I'm going to switch the pick on this one. And again, it's the takedowns, and he's a guy, maybe not like a Dakota Bush, maybe a little bit like a TJ Brown, a guy that's just going to continue to rinse and repeat for those. Brandon Royval, his takedown defense, a little bit iffy. His striking defense, when he gets brought into those wars, it kind of goes out the window. So for me, I like Bontorin. To go with kind of the conversation of compact fighters, boys, you know what? Deron Wynn's probably going to play that one back, and he's just going to think, you know what Matt Allen said? Remember that time? Listen.
Remember he missed weight every time he fought?
Poor fella. So we finally get to our co-main event of the evening. We have Jake Collier, Chase Sherman, unranked heavyweights. Now, we had unranked heavyweights in a lot of co-main events to end 2021. This one is just by choice. Dave Baker saying, great preview. Thanks, FNP. Dave Baker, it's been a pleasure to see you over there in the chat to start 2022, making your picks. And yeah, a guy to definitely follow over there in the comment section. If you see him, let him know. So when I look at this one, you've got Jake Collier, you've got Chase Sherman. These guys strike. These guys happen to volume strike at 265 pounds. Now, Sherman weighed in, 6 pounds less than he did his last time out and physically looked amazing. Jake Collier came in at 264.5 like he did in his last fight. This is a guy that used to compete at middleweight with flashy strikes. Now, he still kind of does those at 265. He had a long layoff. He had some USADA issues. He had some injuries. And so far, it's been a mixed bag. But if you look at the 2 losses that he has since he's kind of come back and made the return, Casual MMA.
Thank you,
with the super chat. Good luck for 2022, everyone. Pumped for the upcoming year. Thanks for the breakdowns. Really appreciate that. So thank you to Casual MMA, Dave Baker, everybody that set up the super chat. When we look at this fight, though, Matt, for the guy himself, Collier, I thought that he beat Carlos Felipe, but the judges didn't, but MMA decisions did. And for Chase Sherman...
MMA decisions doesn't matter, though. It's just people on Twitter.
For Chase Sherman, but it's people that matter. But for Chase Sherman, he's a guy, you look at his last fight, and it's just kind of been disappointment lately.
It has been, 100%. And the weird thing about Sherman is we always hear about, oh, I've made these improvements, but we've yet to see them in the cage. And with Sherman, I feel like he is still the same fighter that we saw in his first stint in the UFC. Like, to me, he hasn't done anything all that different. He still throws a lot of leg kicks. He still is that volume, heavyweight. And he's not the biggest a heavyweight can get. He has a very unique build for this because I would say frame-wise, he could be one of these guys who weighs in at like 265. But like you said, he did look really good, especially yesterday on weigh-in day. So I do feel like this might be the best Chase Sherman we've ever seen for whatever that's worth. But with Jake Collier... It's so hard to break his fights down when you're talking about a guy who used to fight at middleweight, now fighting at heavyweight. It just really is difficult to think, okay, well, in how good of shape is Jake Collier this time around? Because he used to fight at 185 pounds, and now he weighs in at the absolute max that you can for heavyweight. So with Collier, I think he's the more skilled fighter, like almost without a doubt. I think he's the better boxer. I think he's the faster guy on his feet. But Sherman is sort of the bigger guy, even though he's not, if you get my drift. So if there is a finish in this fight, I think it probably will be Sherman with one of those classic, I'm going to chop you down with your legs, going to try to hit you with some boxing combinations. But with Sherman, I still think he's a very, very stationary target. And if you are a heavyweight with some movement on the feet, I think you can get to Sherman eventually throughout the fight.
Yeah, and I mean, for Sherman, he normally comes out very strong in the first round, and then it tends to taper off as the rounds go on. Hopefully those kind of advances in just his physique, maybe that lends credence to a little bit of cardio work as well. You look at the odds for this one. Collier opened up the favorite, and right now he still sits as the favorite. So yeah, I mean, open at a minus 105, he's minus 138. I guess I should have said Sherman opened the favorite. Minus 115, he's a plus 115 right now. And I mean, I go through everything. I look at all the notes. I did like, Collier's performance against Felipe to set him up for this one. I like the way that he looked against Vellante. He could turn it up. He rips the body. He throws the kicks. Sherman, look, the majority of his wins are by knockout. Jake Collier, yes, he got knocked out by Tom Aspinall, but that guy's a mutant. So, go ahead.
That's what I wanted to ask you. Like, with Jake Collier, he is such an interesting case at the heavyweight division. Do you think there is a world out there where he could get into the rankings? Like, is that the type of future he could have? Or do you think because of his sort of limitations physically, because he is a smaller guy for this division, I know he weighs in at the bigger limit, but you just sort of look at his build compared to everybody else's. Most guys are taller than him. Most guys, like, their shoulders are wider than him. I never really know where his ceiling is in this division.
It's going to be a really tricky one. I mean, you put him up against a guy like Pavlovich, he's got the touch of death. You put him up against a guy like Sakai, maybe he could win. Like, see, there are some matchups, but for both of us going here with the man himself, Jake Collier. So we move into our main event of the evening. This is the one that everybody's waiting for, and I see it over there in the chat. Who was it? John is saying Calvin being remarkably overlooked, man. And that is a fair assessment when you look at this fight, because for Calvin Kattar, he is the higher ranked man at 5th compared to Chikadze at 8th. He is the guy that has the crisper boxing. He is the guy that has power. He has staying power. If you watch that episode that we put out there earlier on in the week, what's the key to victory for Giga Chikadze? I thought it was his pace. I mean, it really is. For a guy like Kattar, you look at his last 2 fights, the win over Danny Gade, the loss to Max Holloway. He turned it up in rounds 4 and rounds 5. And if you want another example of that, his fight against Shane Burgos, he loses the first 2 rounds, and then in the 3rd round, he comes back, he starts to move forward, he throws a lot of power, kind of similar to what Chikadze did in his last fight against Edson Barboza. Not to say that he lost the first 2 rounds, but turned it on in the 3rd, made a big push, landed all that power. And it is such an interesting one for a guy like Kattar. Now in his 3rd main event in a row, where he's an underdog, he's the higher ranked man, and it's not just us that picked Chikadze at the start of the week. There's a lot of people out there picking Chikadze.
I haven't seen a single person pick Calvin Kattar, if I'm being honest.
Matty G, Kattar round 4.
Don't worry, there's 3 or 4 of them, but like, you get the idea. There have been very, very few people who have confidently been able to lay out a case for why Calvin Kattar is going to beat Giga Chikadze, and I'm going to do my best to try and do the same, because with Giga, he does seem to be sort of the heir apparent to the featherweight title. Everybody's talking about him like, oh, this guy's going to be fighting for a title one day. It's not when will he get to the title, it's when will he be fighting for it. And my question is, what does he look like when he gets hit clean by a Calvin Kattar counter shot? Because the one thing about Calvin Kattar is that he's going to land on you no matter how bad you're beating him. Like, Max Holloway beat him as soundly as you could beat a person throughout a 25-minute fight. And he was still landing some clean shots by the end of their fight. So I don't think it's as cut and dry as, oh, Giga's going to go in there, body kick him one time like he did to Cub Swanson, and then, wow, we're ready for Giga to be fighting for the title. I do think Calvin is going to show Giga a few different looks that he's yet to see in the UFC. And I always go back to this example. It's when Shannon Briggs fought in K1. I don't remember who he fought, but he fought in K1, and this is the story. He goes, hey, I knew that I can't kick with this guy. He is a kickboxer, but if I get into boxing range, I'm going to negate all of his kicks. So what am I going to do? My only goal in this fight is to get it into boxing range. And he ate a few leg kicks. They hurt really bad. They sounded like two baseball bats hitting each other. But once he finally got into the boxing range, he ripped him to the body one time, knocked him out with a headshot, and the fight was over. The thing about boxing is that, yes, it's the most basic of the martial arts. You only have to focus on your two hands, but it's almost the most complex because you only get to focus on your two hands. And that's why Calvin Kattar always has that one shot on the inside that you don't really see coming. He's always got that puncher's chance, even though it's a more cerebral take on a puncher's chance. It's not like he has the knockout power of a Francis Ngannou, so he's going to hit he's going to hit Giga one time and put him out. It's probably going to be, okay, he's going to be weathering a storm, and then he'll find a counter on the inside, similar to like Douglas Lima versus Andrei Koreshkov in their second fight. Now, with all that being said, I still do think Giga Chikadze is going to get the win because of his ability to do those sort of water in the basement techniques, go to the leg and go to the body, but I don't understand why everybody's counting Calvin Kattar out.
VT is Calvin Kattar's biggest fan. VT, I agree with you in certain respects. Giga Chikadze, I was down on him coming into the UFC because he decided he wanted to grapple when he fought Austin Springer, who, if he's good at anything, is grappling, and that was to his giant detriment. Giga Chikadze fought some of the worst competition coming into the UFC I've ever seen. Daniel Rodriguez did too, and then he beat Kevin Lee. So there are some of those guys where you got to look at, okay, who are they fighting, but how do they beat them? I mean, if you're Giga Chikadze, you lose to Austin Springer, you beat 2-31 CJ Baines, but you beat him by armbar in 12 seconds. All right, well, nobody wants to fight Giga. Then he fights Damian Manzanares, who's 0-1. And taps him to punches in 45 seconds. Then he beats Brandon Davis and Jamal Emirates by split decision, and still in my mind I go, yeah, I'm not sold on Giga Chikadze. So when he fights Erwin Rivera and he beats a guy who can wrestle a little bit, all right, well, that's good.
He was so much bigger than him, though.
Then you fight Omar Morales. Okay, you beat a striker. It didn't look like it was Omar's night in that fight, but credit to Giga, he made it look that way. Then you beat Jamie Simmons, who shouldn't have been in that fight. You beat Cub Swanson the way you do, and then you're able to go out there and beat Edson Barboza behind the black line, counter-striking, and then in the third round, turning it on. I like everything that I saw out of that. Again, level competition's been garbage, but I do like what I've seen, and the improvements in the MMA striking of Chikadze, the positive strike differential, and so on and so forth. Now, what I like out of Calvin Kattar, if he's able to pressure forward, if he's able to counter-strike, if he can land to the body, these are all ways that he's able to Teddy Atlas, put water in the basement, and get a win. I mean, there's a Teddy Atlas book behind me with Burt Sugar, so for what that one's worth. But when I look at this fight, yeah, it really is a tricky one. John, who hit up the super chat, I definitely appreciate you. We didn't get to throw that out there. Matt went on the old diatribe.
Sorry.
But Todd is saying, Giga's cardio. We're going to find out.
MMA Reaper, that is a good point. Like, Brandon Davis stylistically is a very similar... Like, Calvin Kattar's the most refined version of Brandon Davis you'll ever find. But I still, when you look at what Giga does well and the improvements that he was able to make since that Brandon Davis fight, if he could just prevent Calvin Kattar from getting into boxing range, Calvin won't be able to get any sustained offense off. Like, yes, he has leg kicks, but he's not a good enough leg kicker to where I think he's going to be able to trick Giga with his hands and then land a kick, because Giga's so good defensively with his kickboxing and Muay Thai background that he does trick leg kicks extremely well, because that's the key for a lot of fighters. Like, we talked about Chase Sherman in the last fight. What was the key with his fight against Andrei Arlovski? We're both high volume heavyweights, but you don't check leg kicks, and I do at this stage of my career. Even if you think Calvin Kattar can have some success at the sort of long range of his attack, I think defensively, Giga's just a little bit more sound in that area, and Calvin's going to be eating a lot of damage. Now, the interesting question is, what does Giga look like in the 5th round if he has put a big pace on Calvin Kattar? Because we know Kattar's going to be there no matter what. Like, he could take an absolute beating. Trust me, we've all seen it before. I'm so excited for this fight. I think it's going to be great no matter what the result is.
Yeah, it's going to be a great one. I mean, you look at the odds for this fight. Chikadze is the favorite, and it is a tricky one for Kattar because you go from fighting a guy like Max Holloway that was able to do what he did. I mean, land with great volume, but also power. And now you end up with a fight like this where you have to worry about that multi-tiered kicking approach from a guy like Giga Chikadze. So both of us going with Chikadze in this one. You see it over there in the poll. 71% of the fans going with Chikadze. So it will be a lot of fun to watch for sure. And as you know, with Fight Night Picks, we always go back down through the picks. If you missed any of them, if you agree, if you disagree, you can hit up that chat over there as well. And make sure you toss a like because it really does help out the channel. And we're really looking forward to UFC 270. That video should drop tomorrow night, so watch out for that one. And Ngannou taking on the man himself, Cyril Gane, unifying the belts. You have the trilogy fight between Brandon Moreno and Davison Figueiredo, and so many prospects that'll make your head spin. Like, it's a bad fight night card with 2 title fights, so it'll be a lot of fun. But those are the cards that I like. So to kick this one off, and again, a lot of questions, when did the prelims start? 1 hour and 15 minutes is when the prelims start. We have TJ Brown taking on Charles Rosa. I have TJ Brown. If Charles Rosa won this fight, it would surprise me. And maybe he's able to get like a wild submission or a 3rd round win, but I think if it goes to decision, Brown's got it.
Yeah, I think other than a Hail Mary submission by Charles Rosa, this is TJ Brown's fight to lose.
All right, Matt, next fight we have Brian Kelleher taking on Kevin Croom. This one's a little trickier than the first fight because Croom definitely has, I think, more opportunities than Rosa to get a finish and to get a win. For me, I'm going with the man himself, Brian Kelleher, but it is a tricky one.
I just think Kelleher is the more skilled guy. He might be the smaller one, but hopefully his skills can win out in this matchup.
All right, next one we have Court McGee and Ramiz Brahimaj. This is the one where, again, if I woke up tomorrow and Court McGee like just steamrolled Ramiz, it wouldn't be a huge surprise. Ramiz hits like a truck and also has great jiu-jitsu. So for me, I like Brahimaj in this fight. But again, McGee has never been submitted in 31 pro fights.
Court McGee would win a bar fight by decision, and that's probably how he will beat Ramiz Brahimaj if he's able to. But I agree with you. I like Brahimaj's ability to get the fight finished, and he'll probably be able to do it early.
Now, I'm going to make sure on that start time just to be a good guy. Yeah, Phoenix is making the point there. I'm going to go to UFC Canada, where this is a lull, but I'm just trying to help you folks out. There's the tweet. Prelim start 5 p.m. Eastern. So there we go. Next fight, Jamie Pickett taking on a tricky fighter in Joseph Holmes to try and cap as far as what's the UFC ceiling, because right now, if he were to fight a top 15 fighter, he'd be way out of his element. If he were to fight a guy like 15 to 20, he'd have a tricky time.
If this was the second fight on a Contender Series card, no one would bat an eye.
Yeah, it really is.
I think it would fit in well. Like, honestly, you wouldn't be able to tell a difference between the main event on a Contender Series card and this one. It's not like, we're not trying to talk bad about these fighters. It's just, this is a weird time for the UFC. They need replacement fighters as fast as they can. Like, Charles Rosa normally gets a little bit of hype before his fights, and on 2 days' notice, they had to call him.
Well, the best part about it, like, if you watch that episode of Looking for a Fight, in that main event, you see Dana White, he's like, man, the guy's aging himself out. He's 31. I hate to sign him. Go to next weekend's card. There's 30-year-olds, 31-year-olds making UFC debuts, and you don't hear Dana saying that about it. And when you look at Joseph Holmes, it took a huge push in front of the camera for James Krause to get him in, so that is really the tricky one. So for me, I do have Holmes because I do like his power in this fight. I like his odd and awkward takedown attempts. I think he can cause Pickett some problems, but Pickett has a giant opportunity to win, and this is the other one that, like, I'm 50-50 on this. I'm 50-50 on Royval Bontorin, so take that for what it's worth.
I like Jamie Pickett in this one, but yeah, it's not a great fight.
All right, Matt, we move into our next fight. We have Bill Algeo, Joanderson, Brito. I've got Joanderson and all his wildness, and I can't wait for it.
It's either, this is going to be a one-way traffic fight, one way or the other. If Brito has any success, he will have all the success, and he'll probably get a finish. But I do think Algeo can at least use his movement early on to really stifle the attack of Joanderson. And if he is able to start using his kicking game, start breaking him down with the leg kicks and the body kicks, I think Algeo can have success. But this is going to be a wild fight.
All right, so we're split on that one. We move into our next fight. We're also split on it. But I have Dakota Bush in this fight, and I think he is going to wrestle the heck out of Slava Borshchev.
The flip side of that, though, is if he doesn't wrestle the heck out of Slava Borshchev, we're going to get a crazy knockout by Slava, and I think that's what we're going to get.
Yeah, and it definitely could happen. We move into our next one. I think we're going to get a decision. I've got Chikadze, in that one.
Really no disgusting knockout in this match.
You never know. I mean, hey, if Jennifer Maia goes out there and gets a submission win, there would be nothing that would make me happier, because it kind of mixes things up in the division, and then there's other fights you can make. Like, what? Manon Fiorot's fighting, is Jessica Ai?
And that would be a really, like, that's a staple win in the division. Like, okay, if Chikadze goes out there and wins a split decision over Jennifer Maia by backing up and throwing a lot of jabs, takedows. Yes, it's a good win, but that's not going to get her into a title picture with her next win.
You get a rematch with Jessica Andrade.
Exactly, but if Jennifer Maia can submit Chikadze off of her back, like, you can immediately put her into a rematch, because we don't see a lot of finishes at the top of this division other than Jessica Andrade, and that's pretty much the only example. So I agree with you 100%. Like, if Maia can go out there and get a submission, it's going to mean a lot more for her. But Chikadze's just got that classic frustrating style of backpedaling and jabbing.
Clay saying, but will Chikadze really deserve a decision, or will it be the grunts? In her last fight, she was the one that was landing through that tie guard of Maia, and that's to me, that's why she won, but I understand it. She's kind of like Maria Sharapova in there. So we'll move into our next fight. We have Royval and Bontorin, and I switched the pick. I've got Rogerio Bontorin in this one. I think he's just going to be like, I don't know, like glue on paper. That's a poor one. I think he's just going to be all over Brandon Royval from jump. And yeah, does Royval have finishing abilities? Yeah, 100%. Does Matt have long hair? Yeah, those things are true. So there is a great opportunity for Royval there, but for me, I was on the fence. You got a bigger underdog there in Bontorin. I'm going to go Bontorin.
I think this is a phenomenal fight, because it's one of those fights where, okay, if they strike for 15 minutes, we're going to get a great fight out of it. If they grapple for 15 minutes, the exact same thing. The interesting case, though, is going to be who can take who down. I think Bontorin could take down Brandon Royval, and I think he can do it, maybe not time after time, but I think he can do it at least once a round if he really has to. Whereas with Royval, I think he's going to have to be a lot more opportunistic with how he gets Bontorin, to the ground, be it with strikes or with his takedowns. Again, we don't have this on the Fight of the Night screen, and we think it's going to be one-way traffic, one way or the other, but I do think Bontorin's just going to be able to slightly out-scramble Royval. But if Royval goes in there and hits him with like a spinning elbow into a rear naked choke, I would not be surprised.
It should be a great fight. I can't wait for it. I don't know what to say to follow that up in our co-main event. I have Jake Collier to win. Could Chase Sherman knock him out? Sure, they're unranked heavyweights. If you feel confidently about this fight, man,
then you probably know one of these two guys.
Yeah, you're doing something right. But yeah, for me, I've got Jake Collier in this one.
So do I. This is going to be a weird fight, because there's a great chance that we just kind of see both guys do the exact same thing, because both are sort of that, like, putter up, kind of has to get into a little bit of a momentum sort of form. It's just a weird fight. I think Jake Collier is the more skilled guy in this matchup, but again, I'm never all that confident when a middleweight is fighting at heavyweight, although he has been doing it for a couple of years now, but I still like Collier.
And in our main event of the evening, you have the New England Cartel's own. It is Calvin Kattar taking on Georgios Chikadze to Kings MMA. It should be an amazing fight. I know everybody is looking forward to this one. 72% of the fans over there in the poll going with Chikadze, and us as well.
I do like Giga, although here's the thing. If Calvin Kattar goes out there and knocks out Giga Chikadze, he should be fighting like a Yair Rodriguez next. Like, that's the type of matchup whoever the winner of tonight's main event is deserving of. I don't think they get a title shot next just because there is sort of that weird logjam right now, but if they... I don't know what Sabit's doing. Hopefully he is healthy. That would be a great kind of return fight for him. Him and Kattar have some history because they had that weird 3-round main event. But the winner of this is going to put themselves in a great position to have a huge 2022.
It should be an amazing fight. Both of us going with Chikadze. We've got all the graphics ready for UFC 270. We're going to finish up some of the notes tonight. Tape tomorrow. Throw it out there tomorrow. So make sure you check that one out. If you're not subscribed already, hit the sub button so then you know when that video goes live, and you can hit up the comment section. You can toss the likes. You can do all of that great stuff. I can't wait for the fights that are coming up tonight. Return to action after so long away. But thank you so much to everybody that's filled up the chat. And yeah, that residual excitement for UFC 270. I can't wait for it.
It's going to be a phenomenal... Anytime there's a heavyweight title fight, there's just something in the air. Like, you can cut the electricity with a knife. It's going to be a great fight, too. You have a guy who represents just pure power at its, like, perfection in MMA versus, like, the most... I don't know, lightweight and light on his feet heavyweight we've ever seen. It's going to be a phenomenal fight. I could not be more excited.
I can't wait for it, whether you agree or disagree with the picks. We certainly appreciate you joining in. And as we always say with Fight Night Picks,
let's get into it.